Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait another minute to let a few more people join, and then we'll be starting the webinar. Thank you. Okay, hello again, and welcome to our webinar. My name's Dan Hooton. I'm the MD of Spearfish. I'll give you a quick bit of background on me and the other speakers in a minute. This is one of the first webinars we've done for a little while now, but we just thought, given the recent events between India and Pakistan, and the fact we have good source knowledge through our people on the ground there, we thought it might be a good time to do a little presentation on this for you. So a bit of housekeeping. We're going to go through. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'll then do a Q&A with Fida and with Manoj, I'll introduce in a minute. What I would say is I'm sure you'll have questions. If you could put them into the chat on the Teams chat, or wait until the end. We do have a specific time allocated for Q&A at the end, and then we'll use your raising the hand feature, which I'll moderate, and we'll make sure we get everyone who has a question. So my background, Dan Hooton, Managing Director of Spearfish. We've been running the business here for 15 years, and I'm really responsible for leading the team, strategic development, and things like this. So that's a bit about me. I'll just pass over to Fida to say hello and a bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. My name is Fida Hussain. I'm the Regional Manager, Pakistan, based in Islamabad. So we have got a team of 3 members working in Pakistan. I've got a multiple experience working with the United Nations in corporate sector from the last 15 years. That's all.
Thank you, Fida and Manoj.
Hi everyone, this is Manoj Gaur. I'm based in Delhi from Spearfish. So I'm just looking after India and South Asia operation. That's all.
Great. Thanks, Manoj. So the agenda you can see there, you've met us now. You might know us already, but if you don't, lovely to meet you all. We're going to do the security background update and forecast. That's really our Q&A, which we'll do for about 20 minutes. I'll then run through some challenges you might face and draw back on what we found over the last few weeks. And then I'm going to give you a quick case study on Sonar, which is our dynamic risk management platform we're using quite heavily in situations like this. And then we get onto the interest piece, into the Q&A, and we'll hopefully have about 15-20 minutes for that at the end. Finish off with some key takeaways and aiming to close out before the end of the hour. Okay, so the security background, you can see we've got some graphics for you there, just to sort of give you some context. What we found very notable about this was essentially the speed of the escalation, which we're going to come back to a little bit later on, and the level of information that was flying around in both locations, trying to actually find out, well, what was happening on the ground, what's the impact then for people living and working in all areas of both countries, and then how do we shape and form that into some advice that we can give our clients. Moving on then to just to a bit of Q&A. Just wanted to start with Fida. Fida, could we start with you? Could you just give us your in your own words how you think the escalation started, perhaps with some background or some context to when the serious escalation started?
Certainly, Dan. So before we start with the discussing about the escalation, facts and figure about the escalation, I'll give you maybe background about the underlying challenge of in Pakistan. There are two major significant challenges that we are currently facing in Pakistan is terrorism on the top and political instability that contribute many other factors which can hamper the overall economy of the Pakistan. The security landscape across Pakistan, particularly in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, remain volatile, marked by a surge of the militant attack target killing, IED, and active tribal resistance. The Tehrik-e-Taliban and Baloch militant insurgent group are quite active in those part of region. The recent highlighting incident was in the southern part of the Balochistan, which is a city named with Fauzdar, where this Baloch Liberation Army targeted at a school-going bus, killing innocent children in that. Apart from that, on the other challenges, like Pakistan is facing ongoing political tension from the couple of years between the major political party in the country. Protests, legal battle, and lack of public trust in the government are adding to the unrest. And at the same time, high inflation and strict IMF conditions are causing economic hardship in the country. These issues are increasing frustration and raising security risk in many parts of the country.
Okay, thanks, Phil. A lot to unpack there, but very interesting. So Manoj, a similar question to you. In your view, the internal regional issues, what were they and how do they contribute to the rise in tensions from your perspective?
Yeah, India is heading into elections. There is election schedule in the state Bihar in October and November. So, these elections, which always, heightens political polarization. And, in April, a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, where almost 26 civilians were killed. The Indian government, attributes this to Pakistan-based group, which escalating tension dramatically. So communal sensitivity, migration concerns, and disinformation have added to the instability.
Okay, thanks both. So, I mean, really what I'm picking up there was reasonable levels of uncertainty and instability on either side, whether it be due to economic situation, political instability, or election season, that really made it, a ripe ground, if you like, for a rapid escalation. So on that then, Fida, from your perspective, how did the situation escalate?
The situation escalated, as Manoj mentioned, the Pahalgam attack. That was the main reason which has been escalated. But I'll talk about maybe the hostility in the past history between the two countries. There has been a couple of war and escalation which was started from the 47 till 2019. But the recent Indo-Pak conflict showcased a significant shift toward the electronic warfare and advanced military technology. Both nations deployed sophisticated electronic countermeasures, drone, and precise strike systems, marking a departure from the traditional warfare. The recent operation clash between the two nations started, initiated by the Indian on 7th and 8th of May, under the Operation Sindoor, targeting some of the administrative part of Kashmir and several urban area with the missile and drone attacks, marking a major flashpoint in the region tension between the two countries. In response, Pakistan launched an operation with the Banyan al-Masroos, which has been wholly taken from the Holy Quran, meaning iron wall, escalating both military and civil unrest. These conflict had an impact on the widespread protest erupted across the major city as media coverage highlighted image of the civil casualty. In turn, the government imposed temporary blackout and heightened internal security measures to manage the fallout.
Okay, thanks. Interesting your comments on the sort of hybridization, the different modes of the flashpoints, moving more into the digital and misinformation space. And Manoj, indicators or events that raised concern in India, but also particularly with our clients.
Uh, like we already mentioned, the Pahalgam attack on 22nd prompted swift and bold military retaliation, a precise, attack as per the Indian armed force to the terror base camp. The strike were highly publicized, aimed at deterring cross-border militancy. However, the risk of escalation increased rapidly after that, especially with border communities on high alert. India also launches a nationwide civil defense drill on May 7th as a precaution. Yeah, over to you.
Okay, thank Manoj. So it's not just the misinformation that we have to really understand and sort of divine exactly what's happening, but then it's the escalation in terms of security threat levels, exercises, the whole militarization, if you like, in a civil setting that we need to particularly keep an eye on. And obviously, the areas that we were quite focused on were the border regions and the line of control and operations in Kashmir. Okay, then. So we saw this very rapid escalation. People were generally frightened. No one was really quite sure how far it was going to go. But then we did have some interventions over that weekend. So, Fida, what were the regional or international interventions that you think helped to de-escalate the situation?
Dan, definitely. The intervention of the international is quite prospective, and that contributed maybe the cease of fire. Like maybe the Gulf nation and United Nations channel called for the restraint of the war between the two countries before the start of the hostility between India and Pakistan. However, the public mediation effort remained limited. Ultimately, on the back door, behind the scene diplomacy led by the US administration resulted in ceasefire on 10th of May between India and Pakistan.
Okay, so Gulf states with US pressure essentially in the sort of diplomatic channels, in your view. And the same question to you, Manoj, from the Indian perspective.
Yeah, it's the international diplomacy is always work in during such kind of wars. But yes, it's the international community applied might be pressured both the side, especially as the civilian concern mounted. So I believe that diplomacy pressure was essential in achieving the ceasefire, and the same thing is applied here, uh, where DGMOs of both the countries were talk on a hotline and then agreed on a ceasefire.
Yeah, and that announcement I think that came out on the Sunday night was I think was very welcome by all parties. And my sense
Yeah.
was that however they got there, there wasn't really an appetite to escalate to the next level, in terms of uh, change of weapons and larger strikes. Okay, all right. So we've heard about the escalation, the de-escalation, and how quick that was. I think that was the thing that I keep coming back to. But let's talk about what happened on the ground. So Fida, how did you see this playing out with the affected INGOs, businesses and communities in Pakistan?
Certainly, Dan, there was a fear of war between the two countries, so that really impacted maybe the overall operation of the international NGO in Pakistan as well. Because there was a logistic backlog, heightened fear significantly disturbed the daily life during the period of the hostility. In Pakistan, domestic and international flight were suspended and movement across the city, like with the major city like Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, were hampered, heavily restricted by that. The border area was particularly tight in control. A security concern forced the temporary suspension of several international programs and severely limited humanitarian and field operation in the country.
Thanks, Fida. And Manoj, same question to you.
Yeah, the civil defense drill, conducted, and due to that disruption, normal city routines, and during the situation, the military movement and the presence were increased, especially in the northern states of India, and at the same time also the air. Uh, I mean, so the airspace was closed for the domestic flights and the international flight, which were rerouted, and travel advisories were issued, and several organizations temporarily delayed deployment to Kashmir and Punjab region of the forces were increased.
Yeah, and I'd agree the impact of the airspace closure and then the associated flight disruption, both internationally and domestically, did cause quite a few headaches for people, particularly who were then thinking of when things did seem to settle down. It's like, well, where do we stand going into the following weeks? Okay, so on that note, Fida, how do you see things now, and what tensions are still active?
The ceasefire agreement, which was agreed on 10th of May, still reduced the active hostility between the two countries, but I feel like the deep-rooted mistrust between the two sides lingers. While there are large-scale conflict has passed, the situation remains volatile and irregular clashes along the border cannot be ruled out. But on the other side, I must say the hotline between the Director General Military Operations should continue to strengthen maybe the ceasefire for the coming days.
Okay, and same for you, Manoj.
Yeah, after the ceasefire, since 11th of May, it's quieter, but the politically charge, like also with the elections are coming up, and there is a risk of rhetoric reigniting the situation, especially if another incident will occur.
Okay, and to do with flashpoints, Fida, what flashpoints should we be watching out for as triggers or escalations for our plans over the next few months?
Then while the military vigilance remain in place with the DGMO, Director General Military Operation level communication are ongoing, but however, I can feel like there is this absence of the permanent peace framework makes the current calm situation fragile. Both nations must prioritize sustained dialogue and refrain from the action that could trigger renewed tension. I feel like there are three flashpoints which can be addressed. The line of control, any nation which can violate maybe the line of control or border region, that can be reignite the hostility. And the second point is the water dispute. Before the escalation and hostility between the country, India unilateral action concerning the Indus Water Treaty, a legal binding international agreement, could provoke regulatory measure from Pakistan and significantly strain bilateral relation. And third, for not the least, terror attack or false flag operation. Any high-profile incident could act as a flashpoint, potentially signifying hostility. Such threat must be addressed through proactive bilateral engagement and confidence-building measures.
Okay, thanks for those three bullet points there, Fida. Manoj, what's your forecast?
Yeah, after this peace ceasefire agreement, still the Indian armed forces alert on the international border, and also the pre-election rhetoric and communal tension in sensitive states, and ongoing misinformation campaign are all concern, and especially Kashmir will remain a particularly volatile, in coming months.
Okay, all right. Look, thanks for that, guys. Some very interesting information you came out with there, but I think really to wrap that up, essentially there was historical enmity and underlying complications on both sides that made the ground fertile for this sort of escalation. We then had the April and then the associated response attacks that really did trigger this off. A rapid escalation with a lot of misinformation and digital tactics being employed, as much as the shelling that we saw that probably created the illusion of being on the precipice of a much larger conflict. But I do think that risk was there. And then a de-escalation with the GGMO hotlines resulting in the current ceasefire, which I think you were both saying it's holding, but there is a lot of things due to that sort of underlying instability and the election season coming up in India that could create flashpoints that may give rise to another similar situation. We hope not, but the underlying conditions don't really seem to have changed too much. Of course, the importance of that hotline, of the communication between both sides, and then the pressure from the international community led by the Gulf states and the US for them to basically keep talking and keep things below a certain level of response. Okay, so that was very interesting. Thank you for that. So we'll move on from our Q&A now. So I'll just talk about some challenges that you might face if we have a similar situation again, or perhaps you have faced this over the last few weeks. You can see a word cloud there. We tried to boil down everything we felt we were dealing with during this period. I'm just going to pull out a couple for you. So, conflicting or unverified information. There's a lot of information in both countries and also, globally, that we felt it was quite difficult to get a really good handle on, exactly what the reality was on the ground. Lots of information, unverified from multiple stories. So I had to work quite hard to really keep going back to what we knew was our sources of truth, and then try and come up with what we thought was an accurate representation of the situation. The senior leadership, a lot of our clients have operations in both countries. So we do feel that quite a lot of senior leaders were under pressure, both in country, but also at HQ, trying to make sure they have a balanced and objective view on how to manage and look after all teams, and also have a consistent narrative coming out that would not inflame or create any internal divisions within their businesses. The social media piece again links back to the misinformation, trying to verify exactly what is going on. There were reports of drone attacks in places where there weren't. It was quite hard to keep a handle on that. And again, that was Fida and Manoj and their other colleagues going back to their sources and really making sure we verify things properly, which was a challenge. There was some uncertainty with staff locations and movements, particularly when all this sort of massive info increased. So again, has someone got on a flight? Are they delayed? Are they stuck in an airport? Are they deciding to jump in a car and do an overland trip instead of waiting for another flight? Again, verification of travelers on the fly had to be done robustly. And then finally, the last point I just want to pull out, we mustn't underestimate, is the emotional stress and sometimes the low morale amongst staff in both countries. People were, I think, generally scared or afraid, and that confident and clear messaging in a situation that's way beyond our control. But we can control some of the simpler things, like giving a clear line, a clear readout, knowing where people are, giving them some SOPs so they know what to do should they be faced with certain situations. I think that helped people to cope. Lots of other things I could talk about in terms of challenges, but we'll now move on to our response. So we've got a short infographic for you here. We just wanted to tell you what we did and how we found the situation, and hopefully there are some interesting points for you to take away. So if we work through on the bottom of the screen, you can see our different blocks. They'll just change color as I talk about the different aspect as we sort of demonstrate what we did. So this is using Sonar, our risk management platform I mentioned earlier on, that we use really to sort of boil down and fuse our information, turn it into intelligence and analysis, and also travel management, so we can give everything in one concise location so people know where to look for it. So the first thing was risk alerts. We're producing those on a daily basis in lots of countries, but particularly in India and Pakistan. And you could tell really from the uptick in the alerts coming out that there was something happening, and it looked like there was going to be some sort of escalation, although it was very rapid. So we were producing alerts that then became greater in frequency. We then moved on to the spot report. Now, a spot report to us is really a collation of alerts and putting it into a very simple summary where you're fusing a number of different alerts and putting them into a readable report. And the main thing we're trying to achieve here is giving actionable information for the clients, either a traveler or a manager, to really come up with some sort of decision on what to do. And in this case, it was really working out where people are, what advice to give them, do they stay, do they move back home, etc. So there was that sort of live update spot report. We then moved into our standing information. So we had to go back in, making sure we were updating the country security risk assessments for both locations. And we had to be seen to be reacting quickly to that and keeping an eye on the situation. It was a volatile situation. And also in terms of the country risk level, which ties to the SRA, making sure they're adjusted as well. Of course, we have to see what other people are saying, particularly from a government perspective. So tracking US, UK, Indian, Pakistani official outputs, and then comparing that against our own assessments and making sure we're giving a credible narrative. Moving on then, in terms of actionable responses, yes, okay, we've got this great information, but then how does that translate into actionable response for the clients? So essentially, the sort of three key headlines there were suspending travel. So international travel, I mean, was a no-brainer. Obviously, that had to halt, and in some cases, that just wouldn't take place because of lack of air carriers due to airspace closure, but also local staff, lots of people traveling around in the regions and border areas, suspend travel or move them out of the danger area if we feel they're too close. And then, life just doesn't stop. We have to think about, what are we in the middle of in terms of a project? So reassessing field movements, during the period of uncertainty, adopting a precautionary principle unless it's critical. So if we don't need to be there, then we're going to pull back. And then coordinating some sort of checking schedules, and obviously phone, internet, data. This can all be affected, particularly in some of the closer areas to the border. So making sure we had a good check-in schedule and lost comms procedures, and everyone knew how to do that. In the same vein, tracking staff. So we had one team in particular whose flight was cancelled, so they decided to do an overland journey instead, which was fine, but we need to make sure we are conducting journey management. So monitored check-ins, making sure that the routes they're choosing are safe. They know when to check in with us, and we have the triggers when we feel that we should be getting a check-in or we want to send them alert. You may have something like a travel diary in your business, but really a set of travel information in one spot. We call it a travel diary. So making sure we can go through that and A, check it's correct, and B, check that everyone who we think is there is. And if we've got planned travel coming up in the next 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, that we're advising them, look, your trip is more than likely going to be delayed. You need to think about changing your plans early. So that was the sort of the immediate actions. Followed very closely behind, we did activate the CMT, the crisis management team, with a couple of clients. You could argue that some people may not have felt this was worthy of an activation, but our view was it's worth going early, call it pre-crisis if you like, but at least get the team up and running, have the right people around the table. I think the unique nature of the fact this is affecting two countries sharing a large border geography, they're so intertwined from that perspective. It was very useful to have both Indian and Pakistan managers on the same call, so we could basically work out how best to give clear and objective advice to the business. And then that would morph into regular calls and updates. And then spilling off the back of that, yes, we will have our plans on the shelf, but when were they last reviewed? So it's a very rapid case of pulling out the right hibernation or or relocation or evac plans, any medevac plans, and checking that they're in date, that people have them and they know how to use them. So there was a bit of housekeeping that we saw going on with a number of different people. And review. So that really essentially is what happened for us during the incident. We are now sort of notched back a bit. Travel has resumed, both international and local, for all of our clients. We are avoiding border, line of control, and Kashmir operations. We are applying a level of criticality to travel to both countries, so it needs to be justified, but it is taking place. So that really, in a nutshell, is how we found it and what we did. So I'll just move on to some Q&A now. So perhaps we can stop the screen share for a little bit. Okay, right. So what I'll do is I'll go into the chat. I'll take those first, and if I can't answer them, I'll throw them straight to Fida and Manoj. Hopefully they'll be able to answer them. We'll work through the chat, and then we can take any questions from the audience. So from Lewisohn, Lewisohn's asking how close did he feel we came to a nuclear confrontation, given the statements that were given on both sides. My personal view was it felt closer than it had been for a long time. Yes, there's always been a certain level of instability and hostility, particularly along the line of control. But in terms of the escalation, I did feel that I'm not sure quite how close it was, but I felt it was more serious than it had been for a long time. So, you know, it was conceivable in my view. I'd be fascinated to hear from Fida.
Yes, Dan, because this war is totally different from the past, maybe a scenario which has been hostility between the two countries. Yes, from the military side, there has been a loud and clear sound which has been given that in case there is another escalation or maybe attack on Pakistan, they are going to respond. But particularly, I don't think so. None of the country would feel like maybe to use the nuclear power, which can be, I think, a huge collateral damage on both sides of that. That may be the red line of any country, which can be, I think, the sovereignty, 100% sovereignty is being challenged, then that country may be ultimately go for that option.
Okay, thanks, Fida. Manoj?
Yeah, for the nuclear, India has a stand that they will never ever use nuclear weapons in any of the war unless there is a first strike from the opposite nation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thanks for those two. Now a question from Bex Hill. In light of the ongoing tensions, how are we addressing the growing risks of misinformation and cyber threats? Are there specific technology or strategies you're deploying to help clients navigate through the evolving threat landscape? Well, I think we are primarily a physical risk provider, but day to day now, cyber is becoming a bigger part of what we're advising people on. As a business, we are accredited to Cyber Essentials and shortly to Cyber Essentials Plus. So really the line that we want our clients to have is a baseline of Cyber Essentials Plus. So we know they've got a minimum level of protection. And if done well, that can be incredibly effective. Having access to a specialist cyber consultant to, again, give you a cyber plan as much as a security plan, I think now is a must. And knowing when to access that expertise in the early stages of what might be some sort of cyber attack or some sort of threat vector along those lines to your business. So I think a good level of robust SOPs to mitigate a lot of the cyber issues and access to specialists where possible. In terms of misinformation, Fida, do you want to talk a little bit about how you tend to verify and fact check some of your alerts that you create?
Yes, we usually follow maybe the authentic source of that has been issued by the government or maybe the Director General Inter Services. Like during this critical situation, you may find maybe tons of maybe information being shared on each and every group on social media. But ultimately, that create a fear and panic among the people. But we does verify and ensure that the information we are sharing on this sonar is authenticated and factual to the incident with that we always follow that.
Okay, thanks, Fida, and I hope that answers your question, Bex. One from Maria, and this is for you, Manoj. She's asked for further details on the upcoming elections in Bihar this autumn, specifically types of risk at state and national level. Perhaps quite a long answer there, but if you could just give perhaps an initial view on what we should be looking at Bihar.
As the Bihar state election is scheduled in October, November. So before that, there would be a security tighten almost a month ago in Bihar and the border states of Bihar, and any there is a chance if anybody is carrying any illegal weapons or money more than a given amount will be come under a offense. So during this situation, it's better to follow the rules and regulation and follow the instruction of the security personnel and rest. Being a these political election, so all the parties are keep doing the election campaign in different states, so which can create um, a travel advisory that they should avoid all kind of these rallies or road shows which can affect their travel during these election times.
Okay, thanks. So anticipating a tightening of the security posture, a clamping down on the lower level stuff that ordinarily may happen, but now it can't, and then having a map of dates and locations for different rallies and potential escalation times that you need to avoid and steer clear of. Okay, yeah. I mean, Maria, if you wanted a bit more on that offline, then please do reach out to us because that is quite a lot to cover just in a short period of time. So a question from Rosie about the crisis management teams. How do you put it together and who should be in it, etc. So I'll handle this one. I mean, essentially, as I'm sure you do, but we should all have some element of a crisis management team within your business. And the difference between a crisis team and your normal day-to-day team is the fact that you have a smaller composition of people. Your management style might be quite different, and you might have to achieve unusual outcomes, from the team in a very short space of time. And then you have to implement those decisions. So it's a much more streamlined, much more rapid style of management. So in the team themselves, that will be dictated by the nature of your business and your activities. But essentially, you need someone to lead. You need a manager. You need the component parts of HR, of legal, of ops, of IT/cyber, security. You need the core team, all the roles defined. And again, the shape of that core team will differ, based on who you are and what you're doing, and what sort of resources you have. But essentially, you need that core management team. This is the important bit. This needs to be thought about, long before any crisis comes over the horizon, and the team need to practice working together so they understand each other, they can communicate quickly and effectively, and they can reach the right sorts of decisions they need to do with a crisis. I mean, at the end of the day, a crisis is really a situation we're not used to dealing with, or our plans and procedures don't handle, it's much more complex than that, or it's new. So therefore, we need a slightly newer structure or a different structure to reach, the outcome to put it back in its box. So in a nutshell, that's how I see the crisis teams. Again, to flip back to this example, we were quite fortunate in a couple of respects to have clients with operations in both countries, so they had a combined team. That gave us a very holistic view of both sides, and it allowed us to tailor messages to both sides that would fit for their local workforces. And it might also bring to light that perhaps the structure isn't quite as it should be. So now that the escalation has come in, now's a great time to go in, review, did it work as we wanted to do it, or actually do we need to perhaps bring some more people in or change the way that we run it? So now is a great time to do that. So I hope that answers your question, Rosie. Okay, there's nothing else in the chat. Would anyone like to raise their hand or give us a question directly? Okay, no problem. Thank you for the questions that were submitted. If we can just have the screen share back on. Sorry, no, we have Levi. Levi, good to hear from you. Do you have a question? You're still muted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Levi.
Hi. Thanks meeting you again, Dan. I think we've worked on several fronts when I was post-security manager at the British High Commission in Yaoundé. And we needed Spearfish to come in and help deliver a heat training to our colleagues on the ground at the time. Now, I'm just interested, I'm just supposed to know, does Spearfish work on the ground, given the sensitivity of the nature of these heightened tensions and the rapidity with which the tensions between India and Pakistan escalated? In collecting and collating security data on which you need to push forward the work that you do you collaborate with other agencies on the ground, notably UNDSS? That's just a curiosity that I had. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So, I mean, we're fortunate in both countries. We have 3 full-time advisors in both countries dealing with the sort of thing we're talking about today, as well as other people for things like training and response, etc. So we've got a good network, and each of our advisors has their own personal networks that they've built up either through former careers, previous employment, or official interactions with different agencies. As a business, we have commercial sources that we utilize. We have all the open source information, such as the reference that I'm sure a lot of people on here will also be using. And what we try and do is we try and put all that together and boil it down and give our view on that totality of information, how we see it as Spearfish. But the key to it really is, in cases like this, well, in all cases really, I think, is having that on the ground local source of information, and that really is the key to getting that accurate view. Fida, let me bring you in here.
Yes, definitely, because there are a lot of, I think, information sharing between the group. Yes, we have a close coordination with the UNDSS and other agencies as well. But apart from that, we have a strong coordination security professional group, which are based in each and every city of Pakistan. That collaborate, I think, much more stronger, sharing information as compared to UNDSS. So we usually interact, maybe it's not only the development sector, but I'm talking about the corporate sector as well. So we have a group of maybe around 150 people, professional people, which collaborate maybe the overall situation of the country in case there's a maybe escalation situation or maybe a normal situation, starting from a minor incident till major incident. We have all the information in hand. Apart from that, we do collect it from the open sources like the digital media or maybe social media or something, but that need to be verified, because any information coming, we are not blindly maybe sharing with the client or something. We verify those information, and later on, after the authenticity of that information, then we share with the client.
Great, thanks for that, Fida. So Levi, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that was excellent. Thank you, Fida. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, good to hear from you. Mike. Mike, you're still muted if you're okay, don't think we can hear yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, just by way of contribution and just looking at your Sonar app, I think, you know, going back to the question about composition of crisis management team, I think in a fast moving situation like we could find ourselves in, that the company needs to become the trusted voice amongst the risk of fake news. And so I can see that the communications element of crisis response now is becoming ever more important. So you're managing internal communications and external communication, demystifying a lot of the fake news that's coming out. And I just kind of see it as an opportunity to become the trusted voice, which is, you know, so important at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that, Mike. And indeed, our clients, they will have their own internal and external comms teams, but they do need to operate from, as you say, the single source of truth. So our job really is to give them what we feel the situation is and the best course of action. And then they have to interpret that and come up with the best message for their business, whether it be external stakeholders, donors, or to their workforce. And you know, they need to, they know, that far better than we do as communications advisors, but they need to sort of suck out what we're giving them and put it into the right context. And then again, you know, as we're part of the crisis team, we can sense check that with them before it goes out and before it hits the streets. So yeah, absolutely. And crisis comms has always been up there, but I think now more than ever, it's you know, it's becoming more and more critical to get it right. Okay, thank you for that. Any more from the floor? Okay, thanks. So Rose, if you can have the slides back on. So just to wrap up now, we're almost at 50 minutes in, just to go through a couple of key takeaways for you. So the first one is really the speed of escalation and de-escalation that I mentioned. And to me, that requires, you know, an agile response and also real-time information. You know, something 2 or 3 days later, it might look fantastic as an analytical piece, but it's probably going to be out of date. So probably better to get some good verified information to make some good decisions on as quickly as possible. Impact of misinformation, you know, false or conflicting reports creating confusion and risk. As we've heard, there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern on both sides. So that timely and verified information or intelligence, I think, was absolutely critical, and it gave people some good information to make decisions on, but also comfort. You can put out good comfort to your teams. A robust travel diary, as we know, it's never perfect. So the ability to know who, where, and when, giving effective oversight and travel-based decision making, and the ability to sort of go through it and double check it. Flights get changed, cancelled, vehicle journeys adapt to, you know, what the job's asking you to do. So being able to go in and check, you know, is that correct? Are you in that location? It's not saying that we don't have a decent system. It's basically saying we need to check. We need to make sure our facts are correct. Plans and protocols. It does become apparent when those aren't properly implemented or put in place. You know, the gaps will appear. So making sure they are there, and if not, you know, now's a good time to go in and do a bit of sweeping up and a bit of tidying up and polishing. The crisis management team activation, we felt that was important. I think some people within our clients' business thought, you know, is it a crisis? Is it not a crisis? Sometimes there is that discussion you have. And my view is, if you think it might be, then it probably is. And there's no harm in activating the team, getting it stood up. People know who's doing what, and then you can relax back. But at least you've got that muscle memory. And if it does kick off very suddenly, you're coming at it warm rather than cold. Proactive communications, so using the different channels that people are used to, whether it be chat on Teams, for example, or in our case on Sonar, the email, the check-ins, giving people that warm, fuzzy feeling that actually, we do have an idea of what's going on. We may not know the outcome. We may not know the sort of much high-level machinations that are going on behind closed doors, but we can certainly give you some simple, good information to follow that does reduce anxiety and also build confidence. The on-the-ground verification that we spoke about, the importance of having people in country who are plugged into the right networks to give you the right information. And then finally, scalable support solutions. That might be, we have to provide a vehicle at short notice for a team that's missed their flight. We need to deploy extra overwatch because there are now more people traveling than we thought. And that all needs to match the evolving threat. So those are the takeaways. If you want any more information, please do reach out to us. Rosie, we're going to send slides around afterwards. So we've recorded this, so it can be rewatched and shared in your business. We'll also share slides. But thank you very much to Fida and to Manoj, to the questions from the floor. And thank you all for coming and attending. And I hope it's been useful. And we'll be looking to do another one in about 3 to 4 weeks' time on a different topical subject. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, team.
Thank you all.